Welcome back to Her Birth, Her Story, where we share real birth experiences. I'm Brooke, your host, and on today's episode, I am so excited to sit down with Katie, who is a mom of four, and she is going to share with us her 4 different birth stories, how she starts with an induction in the hospital and works her way to a very, very fast and furious home birth that her midwife did not even make it. We talk about all the things, faith and the importance of faith during your birth, and how it is so important to prepare but not to overconsume yourself with education. She also talks about how important it is to make sure that you pick a place to birth that you feel safe, with a team that you agree with and that helps you feel safe and well taken care of. And in this episode, we also mention miscarriage a few times. We do not get into any details, but it is mentioned, so please be warned for that. And I'm so excited for you to listen to this episode, so let's hold space for Katie and her stories. Hey, Katie, thank you so much for coming on Her Birth, Her Story. Can you go ahead and start by introducing yourself to us?
Yeah, thanks for having me on here. I appreciate you giving me the time. My name's Katie Barnes, and I am a stay-at-home mom. I used to be a teacher for about 10 years. I taught kindergarten and preschool, and now I get to teach my kiddos here at home.
Awesome. Can you go ahead and just start by maybe just giving us some background of how you viewed pregnancy and birth before your first?
Sure. So I have 4 kids. They are 7, 4, recently 2, and almost 6 months. And so their stories are all over the place a little bit. But my journey to Braven, he's my first, I feel like it's a pretty typical response. I didn't really know anything except for what my doctor told me. And the norm is you go to your OB, you get your checkups regularly. And then when you're pregnant, you see them at 8 weeks. And then you see them, on clockwork. And it's kind of the weirdest appointments because you go in and then you leave. And there's not much to it. There wasn't a lot of question asking because I just followed whatever they said. And the same then kind of it leads into his story and how his birth went too. I really just kind of followed what the doctor wanted. And I didn't really know that there were questions that I could ask. I didn't really know there were ways that things could be done differently. And so before we even conceived Braven, I did have 2 losses before him within a year. And I was told that's very normal. I was told everybody normally experiences 1 miscarriage and that's a normal thing. But then I had 2 and I was like, all right, this doesn't quite feel normal. Can we look? Then I started asking some questions, can we look into this or this? Or I've had friends who have said, what about progesterone cream or shots? And it was kind of just like the typical medical answer of, oh, there's not a lot of science behind it. So let's just, you can do it if you want to, but we'll just keep going this route. And then I took fertility pills once, a round of fertility pills, and still did not get pregnant. And so then we started kind of wondering, oh, this is kind of strange. But thankfully, God gave us our first. And so after that, then before my second, I had another miscarriage. And we were kind of still starting to question things a little bit more. And my normal doctor ended up suggesting, why don't you just try, was it like wild yam cream or progesterone cream, similar thing. And I got pregnant immediately. And so we found out that even though my progesterone was in the normal range, it was still on the lower end of it. And when we raised that up, it became much easier for me to get pregnant. And I don't know if that, if that would work for everybody, but that was my story. And that also helped me then with my third and my fourth as well, using progesterone cream properly. But I learned after my first that it's okay to ask questions, and it's okay to not agree with the doctor and what the doctor's saying. And I should say, just in case she sees this, I loved my doctor. She was beautiful. She was nice. She cared about me. Um, and there was nothing wrong with her. I babysat her kids. She was a good friend of mine. So she had my best interest at heart. But there's a couple views out there. One is more medically minded and the other is not. And
Mhm.
I think it's okay to experience and look into both of those. And
Yep.
especially if you go a more natural route, like what's it going to hurt?
Mhm.
So those are just some of the things I learned early on from
Yeah.
Braven's pregnancy to my second's pregnancy.
Okay, so now let's just go ahead and step right into your first birth story.
Okay. So Braven is my first. He's 7 now. And as I mentioned before, I didn't really know anything. This was in 2018. And I had a great pregnancy. And I'll tell you this right now. Got 4 kids and I'm ready for number 5 already.
That is awesome. I
I
love
just
that.
love being pregnant. Even the nausea or the sleeplessness or the sickness, all the stuff that comes with it to me is just signs of a healthy growing baby.
Mhm.
And I enjoy it. I enjoy the birth part too.
Me too.
Now, in the
Me too.
moment, I might say differently, but it becomes very addictive when you hold that baby after they're born. And I just
Yep.
love that whole process.
Yes.
So with Braven's pregnancy, I wasn't super sick, just nauseous quite a
Mhm.
bit. And that's really where I started to get nauseous very easily at movement. Dusty shaking his leg hasn't stopped since then. At that moment, I got pregnant with Braven, and he forever is not allowed to shake his leg because I can feel it like I'm on a roller coaster. But I can shake mine. That doesn't affect.
That is so
Uh,
funny.
and so it was a great pregnancy. I wasn't super sick. I was teaching kindergarten at the time, and I was able to teach all the way up until almost Christmas break, close to it. Was about 38 weeks, I think, when I stopped teaching. And I, like I said, I felt great. It was a very easy pregnancy. I say that now because he was a boy. I feel like it was easy, but not everybody is that way. But
Yeah.
then my fourth was my easiest pregnancy, and she was not a boy. That was a surprise to us.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's even true anymore, but
Yeah.
his pregnancy was easy. I went to all the appointments. Everything always looked great. I don't know because every appointment that you go to with your OB or with your midwife, they always use the stick and test your urine. And I had no idea even what that was for. They never went over that stick with me in the doctor's office. They just always, tapped it. Everything looks pretty normal and then put it aside. And so I never really learned a lot about my body during pregnancy. And I just was always like, oh, guess it's normal. I don't know if my leukocytes were a little bit high or different from last time or anything like that, my
Yeah.
hydration level. And so I learned a lot then come my second, third, and fourth when it comes to that. But I never asked questions. I just sat there, they felt, they listened. And then I was like, okay, I got my video of the heartbeat. All right, see you in a month. And so we got closer and closer to delivery. And he was born December 18th. That was the day of my due date,
Mm.
but he was not ready to come out that day. And so a week before that, she had asked me, I'm going on vacation for Christmas. So there's a chance that he might not come before I leave. And in that case, this is who is on call. Now, I will say there are 4 different doctors, and I would have loved to have any of them, except for one. I wasn't a fan of the way they spoke to me or touched me when I
Mhm.
was in the office with them. And I knew that that would be the one I would end up getting because that was one of the 2 on call.
Yeah.
And I either coached, taught, or babysat for all of the doctors. And so I knew them all very well. They knew me very well. And I would have been happy to have all of them except for the one. So because I was a little nervous about that, she had suggested, why don't we induce? And I was like, well, let's talk about that. I did ask questions that what does that look like? What does that mean?
Mhm.
I was already 4 centimeters dilated for about 2 weeks at that point. and it wasn't progressing at all. And so she said, well, there's a good chance that you'll go naturally, within this next week because you've been force centimeters for a while. But if not, we can schedule an induction on December 18th. And so I was like, okay, well, let's do that. And that whole week, I walked my heart out. I exercised. I did everything possible. And he just did not want to come. He was very comfortable in there. And he was very, very low and had been head down, perfect position the entire pregnancy, basically. But because he sat so low, he had, was that lightning crotch for the whole third trimester teaching that would drop me to my knees almost. And my class would be like, Mrs. Barnes, are you okay? And I was like, just that baby kicking. And so the principal even walked in one time and he was like, are you okay? And the kids were like, it's just the baby kicking. Like, they knew exactly what to say. And I was like, I'm good. And so I decided, okay, the night before the induction, we went to the zoo with my mom and we walked around for like 4 hours. I had to have walked 4 miles and he was not coming. And so the next morning we were like, okay, well, this must be God's plan because he didn't want him to come out before we're evicting him. And so we went in, and I will preface this as well. We had a great experience. It was exactly as the doctor possibly described it to me. And so I was not caught off guard. I still delivered him vaginally. But there was a lot afterwards that I'll get into that I had learned that I could have done differently. So there was really no preparing myself ahead of time with birth videos or books or podcasts or anything. I just, God designed my body to do this. And so we'll do it. And the doctor, didn't suggest anything. I did take a birthing class that didn't really do anything, but so we go in for the induction, and I think we went in at like 7 a.m. We're so excited by the time. And I did have a plan to do an all natural birth with no medications. My mom did that for both of us. And I'm like, well, if my mom can do it, I can do it. And so we went in and I said, Dusty, you do not let me talk them into an epidural. And if you know my husband, then he said, okay, if that is what you want, that is what will happen. And so we got about 4 hours in, and the Pitocin wasn't quite doing the trick at first. They upped it pretty quickly. And I have since learned that Pitocin contractions are nothing at all like natural contractions. They are not natural. They are worse because they are not a natural way of your body working. They're very forced. And so they upped that pretty quickly and then ended up breaking my water for me, which I learned later on that that's not how my body works. My body doesn't break the water until the baby is being pushed out. And so they broke my water. And then about 4 hours in, I was miserable. I had pretty much laid in the bed on my back most of the time because I didn't know I could walk around. I've got all these cords on me. And one of the nurses comes in and says, that's like the worst position you can be in. That's probably the most painful position. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
It's been like 3 hours. Like, I didn't know this. I was like, what can I do? And she's like, have you tried sitting on the ball or walking around? And I was like, gosh, these contractions are so bad. I don't think I could walk around. And so I sat on an exercise ball for probably an hour. And about 4 hours in, they come in and they check me. And I was like, you got to check me. I'm pretty sure I've got to be almost like 10. Like, this is like intense. Like, I'm crying through them. I'm uncomfortable. Like, of course I'm comfortable, but I have a very high pain tolerance and I couldn't tolerate it. And they were like, oh yeah, well, you're about 4.5. And I was like, what? I've gone I did more in 2 weeks without this, Pitocin, and I'm only 4.5, but that's because I wasn't doing anything to help it along and I was forcing it. And so one of the doctors I think she just stopped by. She wasn't my doctor, but she was one that I loved and I babysat for, and she popped her head in and I was like, oh, Trista, I've only gone up a half a centimeter. I need this episode. And so she goes, okay, let's get that ordered for you. And then my husband steps in. He goes, oh, no. She told me, do not let me I'll let her talk anyone into this epidural no matter what. And I was
Yeah.
like, I changed my mind. And then my mom's in the room and my mom is like, my baby wants an epidural. You get her an epidural. And so then it's, my mom and my husband both defending me. And
Yeah.
so Dr. Tristo is like, okay, how about I go get it ordered? And if you change your mind before it comes back, it's at least going to be on its way.
Mm.
So long story short, I get the epidural. But before you get the epidural, they have to put a bag of fluid in you. And they did not tell me this. It takes about 45 minutes for this bag of fluid to get into you before they can
Oh,
actually do the epidural. So I'm sitting
wow.
on the ball, going through all my contractions. I'm waiting for this bag of fluid to go through and it's about halfway and she comes back in and I was like, Trista, this is not right. Should not take this long. And so she's like, oh my gosh, you're not even halfway through your fluid yet. And so she was like, can you guys put a clip on this to force this into her faster? And I was like, that's a thing.
Oh,
you can you can do that. And so the bag pressed or whatever and
yeah.
pushed into quicker. I got the epidural and that was about 5 hours in, I believe. And so we're around, 2 p.m. or whatever time, I don't know. And I'm in the bed, I'm with the epidural, and all of a sudden my body is relaxed and it speeds along super, super quickly. The nurses are repositioning me every so often to keep my
Wow.
body moving, which I'm kind of curious now, like where were they the first 5 hours in repositioning me and helping me? All of a sudden, now they are. It moved along so fast, and all of a sudden, it was time to push. I asked for the mirror. So I used a mirror
Mm.
so I could watch. And I remember that very vividly, being able to watch. I could see his head and the hair and all of that. And everything seemed to be going, just great. And as I'm pushing him out, which it only took they had me push 3 rounds. And every round, it's like 3 pushes. So on the third round, he came out a torpedo with a wave of
Yeah.
fluids, but she had to cut me to get him out.
Ugh.
And I remember her saying, hey, he's kind of, taking his time to come out. It looks like he might be getting stuck. I come to find out it's his heart rate was dropping with each
Mm.
contraction. And so she's like, are you okay if I go ahead and cut you a little bit? And so I was like, my doctor says it's fine. So, okay, let's do that. I don't know any of the repercussions of that later. I just
Mhm.
know there's a few stitches. And so we did that and he came out so quick. I didn't see him coming out. I just saw his head coming out before things just happened really fast.
Yeah.
I did find out later from my mom that the heart rate was dropping with every contraction. And so I think they were concerned about that. Although I did learn that's a very normal thing and that their heart rates do drop during contractions. But if they're coming back up, it's okay. And I still to this day don't know if that was the case or not. I just know she wanted to get him out quickly and cutting him allowed that to happen. So everything went great. It was a great
Good.
experience. Everybody in the hospital was great and we were just on cloud nine. Like it just was a great experience. We had our little boy and people were taking care of us. I wasn't getting a lot of sleep, but I did take a while for me to be able to get up and go to the restroom and move around just because of the
Mhm.
epidural. I think they had to give it to me twice or put more medication in because I still was feeling some things. And so it took a while then for it to wear off. And so I was
Yeah.
really trapped almost in my bed, wasn't able to do a whole lot until I
Yeah.
was able to kind of get up and move around. But so yeah, that's pretty much my story with my first. And at that point I didn't really question anything. I told everybody and I still do. The
Yeah.
place where I delivered him is amazing. They were nice. And if that is what you're wanting is a hospital birth in a small center that almost felt like a birthing center in a way that you could go there because that if that's, you're not comfortable with home births. But my second birth, sweet Risa, who was a surprise, the first girl in his family in 3 generations.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So she came and it was 2021. We had buried one miscarriage in our front yard under a rose bush about 10 weeks, 9 weeks or 10 weeks along. And so she was super special to us because had we not lost, we call it Rose because of the rose bush.
That's so
And
sweet.
we wouldn't have Risa. And if
Yeah.
you know her, she is hilarious and so funny. We were about halfway through her pregnancy or a little bit before that when we started really asking questions because as you know, it's 2021. Things happened in 2020 that started really causing people to question the medical field. And by that point, we had already, we had our first and we already had started shifting the way we were eating, looking at ingredients. We're going to feed our baby the best stuff. So let's feed ourselves. So we already had started shifting the way we were viewing food. But then when 2020 came around, we really started to view the medical field differently too because we really didn't want to put anything in our bodies that we didn't really know what it was. And we, had done an alternate schedule for his vaccinations because we already felt this protectiveness over his body. And so we delayed a lot of things or didn't give them. And then come a year, we were like, we're done. We've learned too much. We're done putting stuff in him.
Yep.
So we already have this mindset shift coming along. We're getting close to about halfway through her pregnancy and I start asking questions. I'm wanting to do delayed cord clamping. What does that look like for you guys? Which that's not the way you ask that question. It's more of a here's what I want to do. This is what was going to happen. And so the response back was like, okay, yeah, we can delay it for about 5 minutes. That's the most that we'll do, or 10 minutes or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, normally she said it's white and it's not pulsing by then anyways. And she said, so I was like, okay, that's, I can live with that. We can talk about that more later or in the moment, maybe I'll slap someone's hand away and they won't let him. This is my
Yeah.
baby.
Yeah.
And so thankfully we didn't have to go through that. And then I started asking some other questions, I'm not going to do the goop in the eyes. And it kind of got some pushback. Well, you know what that's for? Yeah, I don't have any STDs. I'm not worried about that. And then it was, we're not going to do these shots. And there was, a little pushback, not so much from my doctor, but maybe from some of the nurses or the other doctors I saw. And so it was nobody was mean, but it just was a lot of not accepting what I'm wanting, but just kind of pushback. Science doesn't really support that. And but then I asked the question and I said, it's going to be close to flu season or in flu season. She's born in December. What is that going to look like if this scare comes back around for COVID or, whatever the scare is at that time? What will that look like in the hospital for delivering? Because I'm not going to wear a mask. I'm not going to get a vaccination and I want my husband there. And so she said, well, you'll have to wear a mask and he'll have to wear a mask. And I said, okay, well, as nice as I am, because I'm really not a confrontational person most of the time. And I said, well, I'm not going to wear a mask. So if you know that now, what will that look like? Am I going to get denied entry? Will I deliver in the parking lot? I was just kind of being funny with her. And she says, no, we'll just have to take a lot of extra precautions and wear suits and masks. And like, I am like an astronaut, I'm thinking in my head. I'm like, I'm an astronaut delivering my baby. And so I said, okay, I appreciate you letting me know. And the appointment ended. And then I left and I cried in the car. I called my husband and I cried because I was like, I felt I left with this feeling of I'm not comfortable with the unknown of what's going to happen. And
Yep.
so we'd already discussed a home birth, and he was like, well, let's look into it. It doesn't hurt. Little did I know, it's really hard to find a midwife available when you're halfway through your pregnancy.
Yeah.
Everybody's calendars are full.
Yep.
So I reached out to everybody that I could look up, that I could find. Nobody got back to me except for one person who didn't have very kind feelings or kind things to say. And I was just kind of caught off guard. And I was like, gosh, I don't think I'm going to find a midwife.
Mm.
And I was speaking to a friend who was telling me about her cousin that just had a home birth. And I said, really? How did that go for her? I was, really starting to lean towards that with this pregnancy. I said, I just can't find anyone to take me on. And she said, well, let me give you her midwife's name because I was there and she was really, really sweet. And so that is how Miss Hannah and I met. Come to know another friend of mine had just used her
That's awesome.
shortly 6 months before I used her. And
Yeah.
then she's now since then been passed around to like our entire group of friends. We all love Miss Hannah, Miss Amber, Miss Faith, everybody in that group.
It's awesome.
And she was a gift from God. When we went in, I called her, I left her voicemail, I heard back from her. And she said, I loved your story you left me on my voicemail. And because we had a connection from a friend, it was easier to get in with her. So
Yeah.
connections are important.
Yeah.
We talked on the phone for a little bit and she said, let's set up a consultation. It's free. You can come and meet each other and we'll see if it's a good fit for you. So we did. And we left that day going, yes, 100% yes, this is what we want to do. And that is when things really started to change because I started to learn so much about my body. Obviously, I was already halfway through my pregnancy.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of catching up that we needed to do on her end to be comfortable in delivering my baby. So, um, I started to learn what questions to ask because they were asking me those questions. And I was like, gosh, my doctors never asked me these questions before. And they were even asking me about how like Braven's birth went and the pregnancy and because they're all connected. I learned how to read one of the pee sticks and I learned that my leukocytes run high during pregnancy. I'm very
Mm.
prone to UTIs and kidney
Mm.
stones and
Wow.
during pregnancy, which I had 8 months pregnant with my second
Wow.
Risa, which I will confirm. I would rather deliver a baby than have another kidney stone in my life.
That's
It was really, really bad. And so I do praise God though that I got it during pregnancy because with her pregnancy, I was very sick, very pukey. And I think it was the forcefulness of getting sick that forced the kidney stone out within 24 hours. But it was a
oh
very
wow.
rough 4 hours. Won't share that story here. That's a different podcast another time. So if you ever need to talk about kidney stones, reach out to me.
Okay.
But the great part about it was my midwife talked me through it. It was like 3 a.m. and she's on the phone with my husband telling him what to go to CVS and grab lemon juice and
Mm.
grab cranberry D Manos pills and get bone broth in her, let her sip lemon water, let her do like she's telling him all the things to help me. And
Wow.
she's so calm. And I even asked her, like, what point do I need to go to the hospital? Because mind you, I hadn't given birth yet. I'd only dealt with a doctor in a hospital.
Yeah.
And so a part of me is still holding on to bits and pieces of like, something's wrong. I need to go to the hospital. And so she's like, well, why do you feel like you need to go to the hospital? And I was like, because I'm in pain. And she's like, well, what are they going to do at the hospital that you can't do here at home? Rest, try and drink, try and eat, throw up, like try and pee. Like there's nothing that they can do for you at the hospital except for maybe go, you are 8 months pregnant. Why don't we do a C-section, get this baby out of you? Like it could lead somewhere you don't want it to lead to because you're
Yeah.
so far along.
Yeah.
And so I was like, gosh, okay. So she a couple times was on the phone with us during the night, walked us through it, kept calm. I never was fearful. Surprisingly, I never was afraid of having to go to the hospital. It just was
Yeah.
something that I felt like I needed to ask. And so that was probably the biggest moment during that pregnancy because I'd only been with her for about 2 or 3 months or so at that point. And I was like, gosh, this is exactly what we needed. And the way she handled the situation, we knew whatever came at us during the labor in a few weeks, we were going to be totally fine. I didn't really prepare for delivery, which by the way, I did pass the kidney stones.
Good.
All
Good.
the tricks that she helped with were exactly what we needed. So come 40 weeks, we knew we were going to be delivering soon. I didn't really prepare much. I didn't really listen to podcasts. I didn't really read. I didn't read any books. I got recommended a ton of books and a ton of podcasts, but I didn't do any of it because I
Yeah.
kind of had the mindset of, well, God made my body to do this. So I'm just going to
Yeah.
listen to my body and do what my body says. The only thing I did do was I watched a lot of birth videos from like Pain Free Birth or other places to
Yeah.
see what it was looking like at home in a pool. And so
Yeah.
that's what we did. We had a water birth. And um I would say around 4 p.m. and December 12th, because she was born the 13th, December 12th, I started to get bigger contractions. And I was like, oh, okay, this could be it. You just never
Yeah.
know. This could be
Yeah.
it. And I didn't really have that experience with Braven because he was induced. And so they were not being timed yet, but they were happening. And so I was like, well, I'm going to make chicken noodle soup from scratch because that's what our family needs right now. And so I'm in the kitchen making homemade chicken noodle soup. I was pregnant. Obviously, it sounded really good. And unfortunately, I didn't make sourdough yet at that point. So I didn't have fresh sourdough bread. So I'm making chicken noodle soup and having contractions, and it's getting to a point where it's starting to get a little bit more intense. And I think I was able to finish the soup. And Dusty, we called the midwife. I went upstairs. I think I got cleaned up. Dusty got the pools. Like it was already set up and ready, but he was like making sure he had everything he needed. I think Braven wasn't quite in bed yet, but he was close because he would have been almost 3. And I think my parents came around like 9 p.m. and my dad took Braven home. They got special one-on-one time together. And my mom then stayed with us. And I think she was sleeping on the couch downstairs. And then around midnight, my midwife was like, let's get the pool filled. We'll start heading your way. And she came around like 1 a.m. And I might not be able to do time frames very well for the other births.
That's
There's a
okay.
4 births, that's a lot of numbers to remember.
Yes.
But her birth was about 5 hours, I think. So Braven's was about 8, unnatural. Hers was about 5. I was able to deliver her in the pool. It was a very, very difficult because, I was very loud. I was screaming quite a bit. Didn't know. My midwife, once she got there, she's like, let's get in the pool. I remember being very vocal, like high pitched screaming. And she's like, low tones, Katie, low tones. I was like, you know, and I'm like, well, I can't make it low. Like, how do you make a low tone in the middle of this? Poor Dusty had me screaming bloody murder in his ears the whole time. He's
Oh,
like, I wish I had my range headphones, like noise canceling headphones on. But it was it it was still it was still very difficult. But the one thing that I remember during it was how close that I felt to God and how close I felt to Dusty too.
yeah.
Um Now, his involvement with every birth has been different, but with this one, with Braven's, with the first, he's like trying to rub my feet, rub my back, and I'm like, don't touch me. And he's like, okay, okay. And so then with Risa's, he's prepared to not touch me. And I was like, I need you, I need you. And so with every contraction, the entire 5 hours, he had to be on me so I could push against him. And so
Yeah.
I was backwards on the toilet for most of her birth, not her birth, her labor. And he could not leave my side. He hardly had time to fill up the pool. I think the midwives had to finish filling the pool because I was like, get back, it's coming. And
Yeah.
so I was like almost bracing myself for every contraction rather than, as you know, letting it consume you and
Yeah.
riding it like a wave. I
Yeah.
was bracing for it. I'm like, here it comes. I'm ready. Where are you? I need to lean into you, and it just made them very intense contractions. And the pool helped. The warm water of the pool was really good. And I remember a few times just very vividly being like, Jesus, like just talking to him like he was right there. And I got to a point where I was like, I think I need to push. And they kind of were looking, they're like, we do see your head. Don't push quite yet. Just take your time. And it must be the athlete in me because I was like, you see her head, finish line, like pushing
Yep.
her out. And it was like that fetal ejection reflex just really kicks in. And she just like torpedoed out of me. They
Yep.
unwrapped the cord and handed her up to me. And that was like the most precious moment to experience. And, you think of, especially with having a home birth, the whole part about the home birth that you look forward to is that time after they're born to just sit in the bed, relax, take them in, have that golden hour or two, have your herbal bath, all of that. That's actually kind of where that stopped. was that moment I held her in the pool was kind of almost the last moment that I had with her to feel that just overpowering love. Because when I got out of the pool to move to the bed, they noticed that the cord had ripped already. It was a
Mm,
very thin cord, and I don't know if I did something or whatever, but the cord ripped. And so they clamped it. So we didn't get to do the like cord clamping. They decided that for us, but it already was mostly almost white anyways. I found out with all of mine that it's mostly almost white pretty quickly after birth. But so we moved to the bed, and of course, once you deliver, you're expecting the placenta then to come out afterwards. And so we're in the bed, and mine is not coming out.
mm,
So she gave me a couple things to kind of help move it along. She's like, why don't you try breastfeeding? That will help contract your uterus. It wasn't working. And so it was never a moment of panic. And I'll say that now. I still never felt fearful. She was very calm. And she did such a great job at just explaining to me exactly what was happening. I was losing quite a bit of blood because my placenta wasn't coming. And so she said, here's what we can do. I can try and give you a couple other things. Like I tried eating dark chocolate. That wasn't, I didn't mind doing that. I tried nursing again, which she did just fine. It wasn't releasing my placenta. My uterus wasn't contracting to release it normally or naturally. And so she said, okay, well, what we can do is I can go in and manually try and remove what is left. And so I was like, explain that to me again. And so she's like, I want you to nurse her, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to, try and pull it out, or whatever the lingo
yeah.
is that she uses. And so I was like, oh my gosh. But I'm thinking, I mean, a baby just came out. So how bad can it be? It was bad. It was bad. I couldn't hold her. I was afraid I was going to squeeze her. So my mom got to hold her, and Dusty held my hand and sat with me. And still looking back, I'm not sad about that because my mom got a really cool moment for about 2 hours after she was born. My mom got to
Wow.
hold the freshest baby she's ever held
Wow.
since having her own kids. And so that was a really special moment for her too. Oh, good.
Yeah.
So about 2 hours is what it took for my placenta to release. And
Wow.
my midwife had tried a few different things. She had tried manually going in 2 times to release it. There
Hmm.
was about the width of a finger, she said, that was just stuck in there, and
Mm,
we couldn't get it to release. And so I don't know what the last thing was that she gave me, but after about 2 hours, I remember feeling a very big contraction, my uterus just really bearing down, and then it just coming out.
hmm.
And I remember Dusty was standing right next to me. Is this a podcast where it's okay to share, like, TMI details? Because
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
standing right next to me, and I was like, "Oh, I feel it. I feel it coming." And it was such a good feeling. And it was like this of a squid just came out because I didn't
Yep.
feel it with Brazen. I didn't know what to expect
Oh, yeah.
because
Yeah.
I had an epidural and they just pulled it right out afterwards. And so it came out, and he's thinking in his head, something the size of a finger is coming out. He didn't realize that's just what was stuck in there, holding it all in. And so he's like, oh, great. And he looks down and he's like, this squid just flops out of you because it wasn't a normal placenta at that point. It had been
Yeah.
scraped apart.
Yeah.
And so that gives us a good laugh. So once that came out, then I was able to move. I felt so much better. They moved me into the bath. They had a warm bath waiting for me. I
That's
took my
awesome.
herbal bath. I held Risa in the bathtub, got to snuggle her, nursed her in the bathtub, and it was amazing. I just can't describe that feeling of relief after that.
Yeah.
And I moved to the bed. Dusty held her for a little while my midwife stitched me up because I re-tore where I had previously been cut.
Mhm.
Seems to be a pattern with every of my pregnancies.
Mhm.
Recovery takes quite a bit longer because of that. But I remember sitting in the tub with holding her and looking at my mom and going, I don't think I want to do this ever again. And then, 2 weeks later, I'm like, I'm ready to do it again. Maybe not 2 weeks, maybe like 2 or 3 months. But so that's basically how things went then from my first to my second.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And what kind of encouragement or even just like practical advice can you give to first-time moms to encourage them to look into pregnancy and birth to ask those questions
Sure.
that you were coming up with?
So I think as a first time mom, the first thing that I would suggest is not being afraid to ask questions, not feeling like you have to trust everything that your doctor is saying. It's okay. It's okay to question the things that they're doing. It's okay to want your birth a certain way, and to not be afraid to advocate for yourself and to ask those questions. I also think that it's important to educate yourself too, because I didn't do that with my first. And so I didn't know to ask certain questions until I'd already gone through the process. And so, whether that looks like a book or videos, or a lot of the questions I learned to ask were simply just from following a couple people on Instagram and watching their videos. I didn't really overwhelm myself with following multiple people or reading multiple books. Sometimes I feel like if you know too much, it can be a bit overwhelming.
For sure.
And that can really mess with your mind sometimes too. And so just really picking one or two people to kind of focus on to learn from. I also will say, as a first time mom, I think it's important. And I did this and I didn't mention this going into Risa's birth, but not everybody is going to agree with the way you want to do things. And it's okay for you to tell somebody, like, I don't want to hear that. Before we decided to have a home birth, that was one of the things that we had talked about because nobody in my family had ever done it. They might not be familiar with it. They don't quite think like we do at this point. And so I had messaged my mom and my sister in law, and I had said, hey, just want to give you an update. We are looking into using a midwife and possibly doing a home birth. And we've not decided yet. But if we do decide to go that route, I want to make sure that there is no negative commentary, negative feedback, or any criticism in any way from you guys, because I don't want the negativity into me when this needs to be a positive experience and I don't want the fear.
Yeah.
So hold your thoughts to yourself if you have them and just give me positive support, basically.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what they did. And
Awesome.
I did find out later, there was a lot of things my mom was like, gosh, I didn't like that or I didn't like this. But once she experienced it and was there, it totally changed the way she looked at it. And so I'm glad that I did that. And I
Yeah.
never allowed myself, and as a first time mom, I think this is so important. I never allowed myself to read stories, birth stories that were not positive, or to
Yeah.
watch videos or to hear stories from people. I would cut people off and I would say, "Oh, I'm sorry. I don't really want that image in my head." And I think that that's really important to advocate for yourself in that way. It's not
Yeah.
being rude. And you can even say, like, oh, I really want to hear your story if it's positive. If
Yeah.
it's not, maybe you can share it with me afterwards. And
Yeah.
that's okay. Sometimes people just want to share their stories and their
Yeah.
negative experiences, and you don't have to listen to them. So
Yeah.
that's probably the biggest advice that I can give.
Yeah. And I think that's really important too because I always talk about how important it is to protect your birth space, especially because you want it to be the place where you feel safe. Because if you feel
Right.
like you're constantly having to combat other people's negativity or thoughts or feelings, then you can't truly birth the way that you need to. Because birth is not just something that you just show up and woo, baby. No, like you go through a
Yes.
lot of things and it's all hands on deck from start to finish. Even if it's obviously a beautiful, positive experience, it's still intense. It's still a lot.
Mhm.
And so I love that you spoke to basically protecting your birth space and just your pregnancy too, because sometimes, especially us as moms, like we want, like that's one of our first instincts is to protect our baby. And
Right. Right.
When it comes to that, you don't want to do anything that's going to put your baby in harm's way. And if you're constantly listening to negative things, you're trying to combat that out. And
Mhm.
that's the last thing that you need to do. You're already combating a lot of other things while you're doing it. So thank
Right.
you. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it creates a lot of unnecessary fear
Yeah.
that you just don't have control over. And that
Yep.
was one of the things that Dusty was always very good at during all of the pregnancies. I really don't ever remember being fearful, but I would ask questions at times and,
Yeah.
what if this or what if that? And Dusty would always be like, I mean, we have faith, right? You have faith in God that He is going to take care of you and He's going to take care of this pregnancy and this birth. And what does the end story here look like? And like, there's no room for fear then. And that was one of the things that always played in my mind was if you have faith in God, should you also have room for fear? Because, He is in control of this situation. And
Yeah.
so I just always reminded myself that, like, I trust you, God. I have faith in you. There's no fear here because of that. So that played a big role throughout all of the pregnancies. I just never felt fearful, even
Good.
when my placenta wasn't coming out. And Miss Hannah said, well, here's two options. I can go in and try again, or we can go to the hospital, and they're probably going to do the same thing. They were always monitoring my blood loss. They were monitoring all of that, and they did a great job handling it. I never felt afraid at any
Yeah.
point that it wasn't going to work out the way it was designed to.
Yeah.
Now I did pass out twice after Reese's birth. I
Yeah.
blacked out twice, and my midwife caught me a few times because of all the blood loss, but
Yeah.
they helped, give me the things that I needed to build that blood back up and took very good care of me.
Do you think that some of that, like, not having fear really contributed to the relationship that you built with your midwife, like, prior to that? Because a lot of people just always talk about the relational aspect of a home birth midwife versus, like, your OB and even a midwife in the hospital. Do you feel
Mhm.
like that's why you felt more, like, at peace?
100%. I always tell everybody Hannah became a part of our family for that 9 or 10 months. And um, I know that her mindset and her attitude towards everything, just with being so calm and just focused on God and keeping God in the center of every conversation we had, if things were to come up, I 100%. It created a great connection between the two of us and a trust too with anything that she told me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so
It also
oh, go ahead.
played a really big part too because I want to say it was Collie's birth, my third, and I had had a friend who had just lost her baby when she was about 8.5 months pregnant, delivered her sleeping. And there, I think, was a little fear creeping in during Collie's pregnancy, a sadness, almost a guilt that I was having a healthy baby and my friend did not. And Hannah even came and asked, "Is there something that's happened that is causing you to feel, whatever?" And we talked through it, and at that point it was almost like I had released it. And it
Yeah.
was and it, the fear never got a chance to take hold because Hannah knew to ask those questions.
Yeah. So, how did you use your second birth to then prepare for your third?
That's a really good question. So, first birth, great. Second birth, had a hiccup, still great. But I learned, okay, low tones help your pelvic floor to not be so tight. I saw a pelvic floor therapist after Risa's my second's birth. And so I did a lot of practice with her and strengthening my pelvic floor and how to positions to be in for birth. So I just did a lot of practice,
Mm.
and I'm a very visual hands-on person, so that was very good for me, having her, examine me and practicing contract, just
Yeah.
all of that was very, very helpful. And I think that was one of the keys in preparing for my third, as well as mentally practicing, physically practicing, mentally preparing and physically practicing deep tones because I'm not like a oh
Yeah.
type of person.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to blow Dusty's eardrums again. And so I would occasionally practice breathing and just like
Yeah.
really practicing that deep, deep tone. And so when Collie's pregnancy was very similar to Risa's pregnancy. So my third, very sick, very pukey, was a girl. I'm like, this must be a girl thing. Risa's position was transverse, and she was transverse pretty much the entire pregnancy until labor started. And then
Oh,
she
wow.
got into the perfect position. So that was also something I never was fearful about. And my midwife helped in preparing for that. If she doesn't, this is what we'll do.
Yeah.
But normally during contractions, they will go into the position they need to be in. Collie was the same way with my third. She was sunny side up, head down, sunny side up. And when it was time to deliver, she rotated and did exactly what she needed to do. Again, I wasn't fearful. I did spinning babies, I did curb walking. I did all the things to help with it, but when push came to shove, it was labor that allowed them to do what they needed to do, what God
Yeah.
designed them to do. And so trusting that and not being fearful and knowing, well, even if they didn't get into the right position, my midwife was very much prepared to help coach me through whatever I needed to do. And
Yeah.
that's what we were going to do. So with Collie's birth, it was very fast and it was very furious. So Collie's birth was about 3.5 hours. And it started off I was 40, so I was 40 weeks with Braven, 41 weeks in 1 day with Risa, and 40 weeks in 1 day, I think, with Collie, which makes me feel like had Braven not been induced, he probably would have been closer to 41 weeks, which
Yeah.
is why he did not want to come out.
Yeah.
That's just naturally what my body does, 41 weeks plus one. And so we had a tornado that night, tornado warning. We were all in the basement. We had both kids down there, both cats down there, all three cats down there. We were sleeping in the basement for a little while. So pregnant, not fun to be on a little nugget couch that
Wow.
pregnant until
Yeah.
about like 11 p.m. or 12 p.m. And then we took the kids back upstairs and I was like, gosh, Dusty, wouldn't this be hilarious if this was the time that I went into labor? And so I went to sleep on the couch then because I was a little bit uncomfortable. And around 3 a.m., I woke up with a contraction that about jumped me out of the couch. And I was like, that was intense. And so I went upstairs and I laid in bed and I contracted in bed for about an hour by
Wow.
myself. Well, I mean, obviously he was sleeping, but I
Yeah.
didn't want to wake him up because I was like, it's in the middle of the night. He needs rest. Like,
Yeah.
no need for both of us to be awake. This is going to be probably a little bit of time. So I laid there and for an hour, I practiced breathing low. So with every contraction, it was manageable. And so I would be like, just this practice breathing low through all the contractions while I could. And about 30 minutes in, I was like, you know what? They seem like they're kind of pretty consistent. I'm going to time them. So I timed them for about a half hour. And they were pretty consistent. I can't remember the timing of them, but I could go back and look at notes and stuff later if I needed to, but they were pretty consistent. So at about 4 a.m., I woke up Dusty and I said, "Hey, babe, I think I'm in labor. I've been contracting for about an hour. I started timing them. They're pretty close together. They're like 6 minutes apart." And he's like, "Okay, okay. Do you need the pool?" And I was like, "Oh, probably not yet. I can still kind of breathe through them." I said, "But I think I might get up and kind of start walking around. I can't really lay here any longer." "Okay, okay. Do you need me to get up or can I sleep?" And I was like, "I think you should probably get up. I already let you sleep for an hour."
Yeah.
And so I start walking around. So I spent about an hour in bed, breathing through them, practicing low tones, just like I'd learned and I'd watched videos and I prepared for. And then I started kind of walking around a little bit, and they started getting intense. So I text my midwife. I'm like, hey, just want to let you know, I've been timing for about an hour. Here's where we're at. They're feeling a little intense. I think I'm going to sit on the toilet. But we've learned that's the key for my births. So I sit on the toilet. This time I'm sitting forward, not backwards. And I was very intentional with just allowing them instead of being like with Risa's going, here it comes. Here it comes. I'm ready. Lord, I'm ready. Bring it on. I've
Yep.
got this. And I was breathing through them. I remember 3 different breathing techniques that I did. The first one started off as I showed you, like, okay, you're not there yet. And
Yeah.
then I got to the second stage and I was like, when I kind of sounded like a ghost or something, I didn't want Dusty's help. I had this. He
Yeah.
was there. He was filling the pool, getting it ready. But I had this. I knew what I prepared for. I was ready. I knew what to expect. And then very quickly, we shifted into the third phase of breathing where I became like a cow. And both the kids are in bed sleeping still. I think it was about 6 a.m. at this point. So I remember texting my midwife and I was like, here's where we're at. And she said, okay, track it for about a half hour. Let me know. I'm getting ready. And then by 6:30, I had texted her and was like, if you're not on your way, I don't think you're going to make it.
Mm.
I think I feel her head. So she calls and she's on the phone on speakerphone. And that's where like my breathing then turned into a like that, like really intense, like
Yeah.
deep within you, like groaning, moaning, mooing is what I was like. I feel like I'm mooing,
Yeah.
but it helped me keep that low tone.
Yeah.
And it helped my pelvic floor stay relaxed. And um, Dusty and he's like looking and he's like, I think I see her head. I can't tell. And I'm like that. I think that's the water. And then the water breaks. I'm on the toilet. The water breaks. And Hannah says, okay, well, I'm on my way. I'm still, 15 minutes away or whatever, 10 minutes away, or whatever she was. And so she said, you need to get her on the floor, get her on her hands and knees and go check the temperature of the pool. So he runs downstairs to get our thermometer to check the water temp. It's like 7 o'clock in the morning. 15 minutes away, 10, 15 minutes away. And he unlocks the front door because I'd already texted my parents like, hey, you should probably head on your way. It's going to be really soon. The kids are probably going to wake up any minute. I'm pretty loud. And so he runs downstairs and within like 10 seconds, he hears me go, her head is out.
Wow.
And Hannah's on speakerphone. And so Hannah goes, okay, well, that was like the first push and her head was out very easily. Hannah goes, okay, we're not going to get in the pool. So we had the pool filled and ready, did not get in the pool. And she said, Dusty, get behind her. Where is she facing? He said, well, she's looking right at me. So he's like, okay, she's in the perfect position. And he didn't understand, like, it's okay for her head to be out. Like, she's okay. He was kind of like worried
Yeah.
a little bit, I think.
Yes.
But then Hannah goes, okay, the next contraction, she's going to rotate her body. And Dusty, you just have the towel down there and be ready to catch her.
Yep.
And that's exactly what he did. He caught her, passed her through to me. She wasn't very vocal, but she was moving and she was making some noises, but she wasn't super vocal yet.
Mhm.
And so I don't know why. I must have seen it in a video, but I sucked her nose in her mouth with mine and spit some stuff out.
Yeah.
And she started crying and I held her and it was perfect. He helped me then move to the bed where my placenta came out very easily because that was
Okay.
what we were praying over.
Yeah.
The whole pregnancy and the birth that, thank you, Lord, the placenta is formed perfectly and it's going to come out perfectly. And it did. And then Hannah arrived and did what she needed to do after that. I got to hold her. I got to nurse her immediately. We snuggled for a while. We got in the tub together for our herbal bath. The placenta looked great. I still needed stitched because I tore again in the same place where I had previously been cut and been
Yeah.
stitched again. after Reese's birth, but it was perfect. I mean,
Yeah.
my kids woke up shortly after she was born and came in to see her, and my parents got there shortly after she was born, and it just worked out perfect. I actually never felt afraid at all that Hannah wasn't there. I read the booklet that she had given me that she put together on if your midwife doesn't arrive on time, what do you do? And
Yeah.
Dusty and I both read that, so we knew pretty much what to do. And she was talking us through on the phone, zero fear. And when after the birth, we had the kids go home with my parents for a couple days so we could just be with the baby. And
Yeah.
we both were talking about how peaceful it was in that room. And not just because it was, there were no people there, but we just felt a sense of calmness and peacefulness. We were like, gosh, we would do that again.
Yeah.
Little did we know that now my fourth birth would be almost identical to that third birth,
Yeah.
except a lot quicker. It was about 2 hours this time, maybe 2.5. And oddly enough, it happened in the middle of the day, which normally a natural birth doesn't happen in the middle of the day. It happens in the evening
Yeah.
or in the middle of the night when your body is relaxed.
Yeah.
And so I went and saw Hannah for my 41-week plus 2 checkup
Yeah.
and um, went to leave her home. And I was like, oh, she asked me a question and I kind of braced myself. And she goes, are you having a contraction? And I was like, yeah, it's a pretty big contraction. And then I went along my merry way. And I texted her when we got home. It was about 3:30 then after that contraction. And I said, you know what? This is kind of picking up. Like it didn't really stop. We kind of continued on my drive home. And come 4 o'clock, I was like, you know what, Hannah, I think I'm gonna start timing these because they're still coming. And about 4:30, I said, might have been more closer to 4:15 or so. A friend of mine was also with her and had just left her house from a visit who was due around the same time. Hannah started to get dressed and ready because I had texted her and I was like, hey, these are getting pretty intense. They're pretty close together. She's like, okay, well, I'm gonna start getting dressed and I will, start heading your way here shortly. And so I said, okay, that's great. Yeah, they're pretty intense. I think I'm going to take a shower, and get cleaned up because I felt like I needed to get in the shower.
Yeah.
That's about 4:30 p.m. I get in the shower. Let me not remind you, but she was born at like 5 p.m. So I get in the shower and with the other two girls, my water broke during the last phase. And so that's what I pretty much thought would happen this time too. So I get in the shower, I'm like, accepting it. I'm breathing through it. I've got Dusty on speakerphone because he's downstairs with all three kids.
Mm.
And one of our kids was sick and sleeping on the couch was not normal. So he's
Yeah.
helping him. And I'm on speakerphone saying, start, start. Like he was timing my contractions while I was in the shower all
That's
through
funny.
speakerphone. And so I turned the shower off. And as soon as that shower shut off, I was like, whoa, a huge shift happened. And I stepped out of the tub and I remember feeling like I need the toilet. So I sat on the toilet. He was about to call Hannah and update her, text her and update her, just like the contractions were like 2 minutes apart. But I sat on the toilet and my water broke. And I
Mm.
was like, oh, it's different. It's not normally like this. And so my hair's wet and I just showered. And so I actually felt really good.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that. I'd never heard of that before. There's a lot of relief after the water broke. And so I stood up and I dried my hair. And every minute I would sit back on the toilet for a contraction, lose a little bit more water, and then stand up and finish drying my hair. So about 3 or 4 contractions in, my hair was dried. And I was on the toilet and he had called Hannah, like, hey, her water broke. She goes, okay, well, I'm not going to make it in time. I'm 20 minutes away. And I know how her births worked in the past. And so she said, where is she now? He's like, on the toilet. She said, Katie, can you feel her head? And I said, I can. She's about two knuckles in or two finger creases in or whatever it is. She's at my first knuckle. She goes,
Yeah.
okay, you need to get off the toilet because I'm guessing her head is probably about to come with your next contraction or two. And so I got off the toilet and I'm on all fours, which Dusty had to like literally lift me up off the toilet and put me on all fours because my contractions at that point weren't stopping.
Yeah.
And I don't know how people do that, walk around during that because I couldn't move. So
Yeah.
he physically put me on all fours very gently. And he knew what was about to happen. He knew he was about to catch another football. He knew exactly what was, and we were prepared. We were totally
Yeah.
calm. The pushing wasn't quite as quick. I think it took about 4 contractions before her head came out, which was very, very painful. How, like, even though it was so quick, I think I just dilated really, really quick. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so her head came out. And I remember right before that 4th contraction, when her head came out, I looked at him and I was like, I don't think my body can do this again. Like, this is so hard. And then her head came out and it was kind of like, it's such
Relief.
like a pressure release.
Yep.
And then you know what's about to happen. He goes, without, I don't even remember if Hannah, she probably was just on speakerphone listening, but Dusty just kind of kicked it into gear and he goes, okay, she's going to rotate her body because he knows that from last time. And I'm going to catch her and I'll hand her up to you. And I said, okay, I'm ready. Let's do this. And so she did. She rotated. He caught her, except for this time, he almost missed her because so much water came just gushing out with her. And he said it was like
Slippery.
a tidal wave. It went all over our bathroom, which we didn't have that with the other 2 because the water broke with that push, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And so he didn't even have a towel in his hands. And so this water comes gushing out and he's like, I almost dropped her. And I'm like, I know she probably would have been fine. We're really close to the floor anyway. And he passes her up to me and I hold her and I look at her and then I look up and standing there in the doorway is Risa, our second. And she goes, is that the new baby? Like, she wasn't scared. She
Yeah.
wasn't grossed out. And I was like, she's here. Your new
Yeah.
sister is here. And it was such a special moment. She didn't see her be born, but she
Yeah.
saw her like right after. And I said, do you want to come and see her? And so she kind of like looked around at this because she's kind of our like, ew, my hand's wet type of person.
Yeah.
She didn't really wasn't bothered by anything. And she came over and she was like, hi, baby sister. Like, we got a picture of her standing next to her. And then the placenta came out just fine again.
Good.
And Dusty helped get me to the bed. And at that point, then my midwife was there and everything just it was magical. I mean, it was almost identical to my 3rd birth. And I know I had said to him, like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this again. But almost within 2 days, I was like, I want to do this again. Like, this is
Yeah.
such a feeling of just, it's almost addictive. But
Yeah.
that's kind of how that birth went as well.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. And I just think that it is so funny because I feel like your 3rd and kind of your 4th too just relate a lot to my 2nd because
I thought so too.
Zach literally did the same exact thing. Like, I birthed his head and he was like freaking out, like asking my midwife, Brooke, he was like, his head's out, his head's out. Is that okay? Is that okay? And I'm like literally like just have a head out. I'm like, yes, it's fine. Like, he's fine. He's gonna all come
Right.
out with the next push. And then he
Right.
ended up coming out. I just think husbands too, like, obviously they're not trained in that too, because you don't really think that that's exactly how your birth is gonna be, especially when
Right.
it ends up being fast too. So I just thought
Yep.
that was so funny. Zach will appreciate that he wasn't the only dad to think that. So yeah.
We had the pool filled and ready. I didn't make it to the pool
Yeah.
again. So I don't even know if we have a 5th. I'd love a 5th. I don't know if we'll even bother with the pool.
Trust me, that's what I said too, because like depending on how many kids, God willing, for our next, like I would love a water birth because I have not got to experience that yet. I've had 2 land births. So, but
Mhm.
at this point, I've already mastered the land birth. I might as well just
Right.
keep doing it on land, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I would love to do another water birth because I enjoyed it with Risa's. You know, it was very clean. All my
Yeah,
babies come out so clean,
that's all.
but especially that water birth. but also just because I tear, I needed
Mm,
lots of stitches. That can help with tearing as well. Having
yeah.
the water birth, I just can't seem to make it into the water.
Yeah. No, I mean, when they're coming that fast, I mean,
Right.
like 2 hours, that's almost how long it was for my second too, and I've had a 14-hour, I think it's like 14-hour, and then an hour and like 28-minute. Like, the difference between the 2 is just they're intense in their own ways, and
Yeah.
for my I hope that there's some middle ground. I hope that it's not 14 hours, and I could be fine with a little bit longer than an hour and 28
Yeah.
minutes, so.
Well, my midwife told me, Miss Hannah said, "Okay, I should have left the moment you said this was getting intense." And
Yeah.
she goes, "I'm gonna write that down, and if you come back into me for a fifth or more, the moment you tell me it's getting intense, I am already on my way."
Yeah. I love that though, because I think that really speaks volumes to the midwifery model too, that like she cares and wants to, be there and doesn't want to
Right.
like miss things like that, that she cares enough to like put that in your notes too. I think
Right.
that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So we enjoyed it just being the two of us again. And she said, "I love that for you. I would just prefer that I'm in the room. I can be silent on the other side of the room, but I would just prefer I be there." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"That's totally fine."
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I totally respect that too. So, looking across all of your births, and obviously they all progressively got faster, you learned a lot of new things. How do you think that kind of that progression from your 4 births really prepared you for motherhood?
So, with each of the births, there was always a lot of things that were unexpected or you didn't plan for, or you thought would go a specific way, and it didn't. And I think being able to be flexible, go with the flow, trust yourself, rely on your husband, and you're a team in it throughout each birth, 100% prepares you then for motherhood.
Yeah.
Because whether you're bringing in your first baby, you're transitioning to 2. For us, it was 3 or 4. Your life changes a lot. And you just have to be able to give yourself grace, allow yourself to be flexible, and really rely on your partner, rely on your spouse. You're a team in this together. I think that your kids will learn a lot from you, watching you and your spouse together as a team.
Yeah.
And I think birth prepares you for some of that.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think that's really a really good word, especially for either first time moms or just moms who are in the thick of it too. And a lot of it comes from mindset, mentality as well, and the people that you have pouring into your life. And, you've mentioned your faith a lot throughout this podcast. Can you kind of like just speak to that a little bit, how monumental your faith was in all of your birthing experiences?
Absolutely. I think, well, first of all, from even before my experiences with birth, going through 2 miscarriages and then birth and then another miscarriage and then 3 more births after that, I think faith plays the largest role in what got me through all of that. Because
Yeah.
of my faith, I didn't have fear. I
Yeah.
never feared that we would have children or not because
Yeah.
I knew the end of my story, God, we would have a family. And how that came about, I didn't know, but I never feared the next step.
Yeah.
I never feared the next pregnancy, the next birth. I never allowed Satan to get that foothold on me to create an image that it was not from God. And I think that when you have that relationship with Christ and you can fully rely on Him, and your husband does too, because you're equally yoked, and he can help lead you when you start to stray a little bit. Because let's be honest, it is scientifically shown that your brain changes as a mom and things creep in like anxieties, like I'm going to fall down the steps or I'm going to trip over a marble and this knife I'm holding is going to stab someone. Like
Yeah.
you just visualize these things that, aren't going to happen because
Yeah.
Satan is trying to take you down in any way possible. And when your husband is grounded and firm in his faith, he can help you from straying off of, of the Lord. in
Yeah.
what the Lord has promised and your faith in God. And that fear cannot take hold because of that.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think that that's really good. Even with not pregnancy and birth and stuff, I just feel like that's really good, like life advice as well. So thank you for sharing that. I like to end every single episode with one specific question, and that is if you could speak one piece of empowering wisdom into the hearts of the mothers listening, what would it be?
That's such a good question. I mean, there's so many things, but I think I have to go back around to what I've already been mentioning. And that is if your faith is strong in God and you fully rely on Him, then what room do you have for fear? And if your spouse is in the same mindset as you and they can keep you focused on that, I think that is one of the most empowering things that you can have. Keep your faith strong and you can keep the fear out or at a minimum.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And birth is all about teamwork too. And that can be with your husband, obviously your midwifery team or your OB team. And obviously, God plays a vital role in all of that. So I really appreciate you sharing. And thank you so much for coming on Her Birth, Her Story, Katie.
Thanks, Brooke. I appreciate it.
Man, I cannot believe that her last two births that she's had have been fast and furious, where the midwife did not even make it. It reminds me so much of my second birth. So when she was talking about those, it just made me really think about Maverick and just all the emotions and just how empowering it felt. And I just love that you can see the progression from Katie's first birth in the hospital to her fourth birth at home, and just how every single birth she grew, she educated herself, and how wonderful of a team her and her husband made in every single birth. So thank you, Katie, so much for sharing and empowering other women with your stories. If this episode inspired you, please share it with another mama or mom-to-be who needs to hear it. Don't forget to like, rate, review the show. This helps us to get this message out to as many moms as possible. And remember, this is your body, your baby, and your birth. We are reclaiming birth one story at a time. I also want to add this disclaimer that this is not to be taken as medical advice. And just remember, these are people's real experiences. These are things that moms have went through. This is their real, raw experience, their own personal convictions, and none of this is to be taken as medical advice. Please make sure that if you are seeking medical advice, then reach out to your own provider so that you can figure out what is best for you.